The mist clung to the abandoned research facility like a burial shroud, thick and unnatural in the sweltering Congo heat. Dr. Sarachan had warned them not to come here, her voice trembling over the satellite phone as she spoke of things that defied scientific explanation. But the corporate executives needed answers, and answers required investigation. The expedition team of 6 moved through the overgrown compound, their boots crunching on broken glass and scattered papers that had once contained groundbreaking primate research. Vines had already begun reclaiming the concrete structures, nature asserting its dominance over human ambition. The air hung heavy with the scent of decay and something else, something wild and primal that made their skin crawl. The lead investigator pushed open the door to Laboratory 7, the hinges screaming in protest. Inside, overturned tables and shattered equipment told a story of chaos. Claw marks gouged deep into the metal walls, far too large and powerful to have come from any known primate. The scratches formed patterns that seemed almost deliberate, as if marking territory or sending a message. "Jesus Christ," whispered the photographer, his camera trembling as he documented the destruction. What kind of animal could do this? The question hung in the air like a curse. According to the files, Laboratory 7 had housed only one subject, a massive silverback gorilla named Subject 47, part of an experimental program studying enhanced intelligence and aggression. The project had been terminated 3 months ago under mysterious circumstances, all personnel evacuated within hours. As they moved deeper into the facility, the temperature seemed to drop despite the tropical climate outside. Their breath began to mist, and frost formed on the broken windows. The silence was absolute, broken only by the distant sound of something moving through the jungle, something large, deliberate, and getting closer. The security footage room yielded the first real clues. Banks of monitors flickered with static, but one screen still functioned, displaying grainy black and white images from the night everything went wrong. The team gathered around, watching in horrified fascination as the timestamp showed 11:47 p.m., 3 months ago. On screen, Subject 47 sat motionless in his reinforced enclosure, a magnificent creature weighing over 400 pounds. Then, without warning, the gorilla's eyes snapped open, glowing with an otherworldly light. The massive animal stood, its movements fluid and purposeful, and walked directly through the steel bars of his cage as if they were mere shadows. "That's impossible," breathed the structural engineer. Those bars were rated for 10,000 pounds of pressure. But the footage continued, showing the ghostly gorilla moving through the facility with supernatural grace. Researchers fled in terror as the phantom beast pursued them, its massive fists leaving no marks on the walls it struck, yet somehow the humans it touched crumpled like broken dolls. The creature's roar echoed through the speakers, a sound that seemed to come from beyond the grave itself. The video cut to static at 11:52 p.m. 5 minutes of footage that defied everything they understood about the physical world. As if summoned by their viewing of the tape, a low rumble echoed through the facility. The sound was unmistakably primate, a territorial call that vibrated through their bones and triggered every primitive fear buried in their DNA. The lights flickered, and the temperature plummeted further. "We need to leave," urged the medic, her voice barely above a whisper. "Now." But as they turned toward the exit, massive footprints began appearing in the dust at their feet, fresh prints, still forming as they watched. Each footprint was the size of a dinner plate, pressed deep into the concrete floor by an impossible weight. The prints led directly toward them, as if something invisible was approaching with deliberate, predatory intent. The photographer raised his camera, the flash illuminating the corridor in stark white light. For just an instant, caught in that brief moment of illumination, they saw it. The outline of a massive gorilla, translucent and shimmering like heat waves, its eyes burning with malevolent intelligence. Then darkness returned, and the phantom was gone. But the footprints continued to appear, circling them now, and the temperature dropped so rapidly that their breath came in sharp puffs of vapor. The walls began to vibrate with a sound like distant thunder, growing louder and more intense with each passing second. Suddenly, one of the team members screamed, a sound of pure terror that cut through the air like a blade. When the others turned, they saw him suspended 3 feet off the ground, invisible hands wrapped around his throat, his feet kicking frantically at empty air. The phantom gorilla had found them, and it was no longer content to simply watch. The suspended team member's screams cut through the facility like shattered glass before abruptly stopping. His body dropped to the concrete floor with a sickening thud, unconscious but breathing. Dark bruises in the perfect shape of massive fingers encircled his throat, evidence of an encounter that should have been impossible. The remaining 5 expedition members huddled together, their flashlights cutting weak beams through the supernatural darkness that had descended upon Laboratory 7. The temperature continued to plummet, their breath now forming thick clouds that hung in the air like ghostly warnings. Ice crystals began forming on the walls, spreading in patterns that resembled the territorial markings of a great ape. "The research files," gasped the archivist, clutching a waterlogged folder she'd salvaged from the wreckage. Subject 47 wasn't just any gorilla. They were experimenting with consciousness transfer, trying to preserve animal intelligence beyond death. The project was called Eternal Instinct. As she spoke, the facility's emergency lighting system flickered to life, casting everything in hellish red illumination. The backup generators shouldn't have been functional after 3 months of abandonment, yet somehow power coursed through the building's veins like supernatural blood. In the crimson glow, they could see their surroundings more clearly, and wished they couldn't. The walls were covered in fresh scratches, deep gouges that spelled out primitive symbols and territorial warnings. But these weren't random marks of animal rage. They formed patterns, almost like a language, as if the phantom gorilla was trying to communicate something beyond simple aggression. The message was clear even without translation: this was its domain now, and they were trespassing. A thunderous roar erupted from somewhere deep within the facility, so powerful it shook dust from the ceiling and cracked the remaining windows. The sound carried layers of emotion, rage, pain, and something that might have been loneliness. It was the cry of a creature trapped between worlds, neither fully alive nor completely dead. The photographer, still clutching his camera despite his trembling hands, noticed something disturbing in his recent shots. When he scrolled through the images on his camera's display, the phantom gorilla appeared more solid in each successive photo, as if their presence was somehow feeding its ability to manifest in the physical world. "It's getting stronger," he whispered, showing the others the progression of images. "Look at this, in the first shot, it's barely visible. But here, in the last one, you can see muscle definition, facial features. It's becoming more real." The unconscious team member stirred, his eyes fluttering open. When he tried to speak, only a hoarse whisper emerged from his damaged throat. It spoke to me," he croaked. "In my mind. It's not just angry, it's an agony. The experiments, they trapped it between life and death. It can't move on, can't find peace." Before anyone could respond, the facility's intercom system crackled to life. Dr. Sarah Chen's voice echoed through the corridors, but the recording was 3 months old, playing back the final moments before the evacuation. Her words were fragmented, distorted by static and terror. Subject 47 is, "The consciousness transfer was successful, but something went wrong. It's not just preserving intelligence, it's creating a bridge between dimensions. The gorilla died during the procedure, but its rage, its territorial instincts, they're manifesting as pure psychic energy. Evacuate immediately, it's learning to manipulate physical matter." The recording cut to static, then began playing backward, the words becoming an inhuman growl that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. The phantom gorilla was using the facility's own systems against them, turning their technology into instruments of psychological warfare. Heavy footsteps echoed from the corridor behind them, not the soft padding of the invisible creature they'd encountered before, but the deliberate, measured gait of something that had gained enough substance to make real sound. The team turned as one, their lights illuminating a sight that would haunt their dreams forever. The phantom gorilla stood at the far end of the hallway, no longer translucent but solid enough to cast a shadow. Its massive frame filled the corridor from wall to wall, silver fur rippling with otherworldly energy. But it was the creature's eyes that truly terrified them, ancient, intelligent, and burning with the accumulated rage of 3 months trapped in limbo. The beast began to advance, each footstep leaving smoking prints in the concrete. As it moved, the walls around it began to warp and bend, reality itself seeming to buckle under the weight of its supernatural presence. The air grew thick and oppressive, making it difficult to breathe. The exit, someone screamed, but when they turned toward their escape route, they found their path blocked by another manifestation of the creature. The phantom gorilla had somehow split its consciousness, appearing in multiple locations simultaneously. They were surrounded by impossible geometry, trapped in a maze of supernatural terror. The original manifestation raised its massive fists and brought them down on the floor with earth-shaking force. Cracks spiderwebbed across the concrete, and from those fissures emerged a sound like screaming, the voices of every researcher who had died in this place, their final moments echoing through dimensions. As the team pressed themselves against the walls in terror, they realized the horrible truth: the phantom gorilla wasn't just haunting this facility. It was transforming it into something else entirely, a nexus between the world of the living and the realm of the dead. And they had walked directly into its web. The creature's roar shook the building to its foundations, and in that sound, they heard their doom approaching. The facility groaned like a living thing as reality continued to warp around the phantom gorilla's presence. Walls breathed with an organic rhythm, and the floor beneath their feet had taken on the texture of flesh, warm and pulsing with an alien heartbeat. The expedition team found themselves trapped in a nightmare that defied the laws of physics, where the boundary between the material world and the supernatural had completely dissolved. The multiple manifestations of the creature began to circle them with predatory intelligence, each one slightly different, some more solid, others flickering between dimensions like heat mirages. The team realized with growing horror that they weren't seeing copies of the same entity, but rather different aspects of its fractured consciousness, each one representing a different stage of its tormented existence. One manifestation showed the gorilla as it had been in life, magnificent, powerful, but with eyes full of confusion and fear from the experiments. Another revealed the moment of its death, its form flickering between solid flesh and ethereal energy. The third and most terrifying manifestation was what it had become, a creature of pure rage and supernatural power, its eyes burning with the accumulated fury of months spent trapped between worlds. The archivist clutched the research files tighter, her voice shaking as she read aloud from Dr. Chen's notes. The consciousness transfer protocol was designed to preserve the subject's memories and instincts in a quantum field matrix. But the gorilla's death during the procedure created an unexpected resonance cascade. Instead of preserving consciousness, we've created a psychic anchor that's pulling other dimensional entities through the barrier. As if responding to her words, the temperature plummeted even further, and frost began forming intricate patterns on every surface. But these weren't random ice crystals, they formed images of other creatures, other experiments that had gone wrong in facilities around the world. The phantom gorilla wasn't alone in its torment, it was part of a larger network of supernatural entities created by humanity's reckless pursuit of scientific advancement. The photographer's camera began taking pictures on its own, the flash firing in rapid succession. Each image captured something different, glimpses of other dimensions bleeding through, spectral animals from failed experiments, and most disturbing of all, the faces of researchers who had vanished from similar facilities worldwide. The phantom gorilla was a node in a vast web of supernatural horror that spanned the globe. Suddenly, the unconscious team member began to convulse, his body arching off the floor as if possessed. When his eyes opened, they glowed with the same otherworldly light as the phantom gorilla's. When he spoke, his voice carried harmonics that no human throat could produce. "You cannot comprehend what you have unleashed," the possessed man said, his words echoing from multiple directions simultaneously. "We are the rage of the natural world given form, the fury of creatures tortured in the name of progress. This facility is just the beginning. We are spreading, growing stronger, and soon we will reclaim what was taken from us." The phantom gorilla's primary manifestation stepped closer, its massive form now so solid that dust fell from the ceiling with each footstep. As it approached, the team could see that its fur was not silver but composed of countless tiny lights, the souls of every animal that had suffered in laboratories around the world, drawn to this nexus of supernatural power. The creature reached out with one massive hand, not to harm them but to touch the wall. Where its fingers made contact, the concrete began to transform, becoming transparent like glass. Through this supernatural window, they could see other facilities, other teams of researchers facing similar horrors. The Phantom Gorilla had created a network of haunted locations, each one a gateway to the realm where tortured animal spirits gathered their strength. "It's not just haunting this place," whispered the structural engineer, his voice barely audible. "It's turning it into a beacon, calling others like itself. Every animal that died in agony, every creature that suffered for human ambition, they're all being drawn here." The facility's walls began to pulse with bioluminescent veins, and through the transparent sections, they could see shapes moving in the darkness beyond, other phantom animals, each one a testament to scientific cruelty. Ghost wolves with eyes like burning coals, spectral elephants whose trumpeting calls echoed across dimensions, phantom big cats that stalked through the spaces between worlds. The possessed team member rose to his feet, moving with the fluid grace of the gorilla itself. "You came here seeking answers," he said, his voice now a perfect mimicry of the creature's otherworldly tones. "But you have become part of the answer. Your fear, your terror, it feeds us, makes us stronger. Soon, we will have enough power to break through completely." The Phantom Gorilla's roar shook the facility so violently that cracks appeared in the air itself, revealing glimpses of a realm where natural law held no sway. Through these dimensional fissures, they could see the true scope of what they faced, an army of supernatural creatures, all united by their shared suffering and burning desire for revenge against humanity. As the team huddled together in terror, they realized that their expedition had been more than just an investigation. They had been lured here, drawn by the Phantom Gorilla's growing influence to serve as witnesses to its transformation from a single tortured spirit into something far more dangerous, a rallying point for every animal that had ever suffered at human hands. The creature's eyes fixed on them with predatory intelligence, and in that gaze, they saw their fate. They would not be leaving this facility. They would become part of its growing power, their life force absorbed into the supernatural matrix that was spreading across the world like a plague of vengeance. The Phantom Gorilla raised its massive fists, and reality itself began to crack around them like breaking glass. The cracks in reality spread like a spider's web, each fissure revealing glimpses of a world where the natural order had been inverted. Through these dimensional tiers, the phantom animals poured forth, not as individual spirits, but as a unified force of supernatural vengeance that had been building for decades across every laboratory, every research facility, every place where creatures had suffered in the name of human progress. The facility itself had become a living entity, its walls pulsing with the collective heartbeat of 1,000 tortured souls. The Phantom Gorilla stood at the center of this transformation, no longer just a single creature but the avatar of nature's accumulated rage. Its form had grown beyond physical limitations, towering above them like a primordial god of retribution. The possessed team member's body began to change, his human features melting away to reveal something that was neither man nor beast but a hybrid of both, a preview of what humanity would become when the phantom animals completed their work. His voice, when he spoke, carried the weight of every species that had ever been caged, experimented upon, or destroyed. "For too long, you have treated us as objects, as resources to be consumed and discarded," the hybrid creature said, its words echoing through dimensions. "But consciousness cannot be destroyed, only transformed. Every animal that died in agony became a thread in this web, and now the web is complete." The remaining team members watched in horror as the facility's transformation accelerated. The walls became transparent membranes showing laboratories around the world where similar manifestations were occurring. In Tokyo, phantom dolphins were rising from the depths of marine research centers. In London, spectral primates were breaking free from pharmaceutical testing facilities. In New York, ghost rats were swarming through the subway tunnels, carrying with them the fury of millions of their kind. The photographer's camera captured it all, but the images it recorded were no longer bound by the laws of physics. Each photograph showed multiple timelines simultaneously, past experiments, present manifestations, and future consequences all layered together in impossible compositions that hurt to look at directly. The Phantom Gorilla's roar had become a symphony, joined by the voices of every animal spirit that had answered its call. The sound was beautiful and terrible, a harmony of rage that resonated through the bones of the earth itself. As the chorus grew louder, the dimensional barriers grew thinner, allowing more of the supernatural realm to bleed through into reality. The archivist, still clutching the research files, made a desperate discovery in the final pages of Dr. Chen's notes. "There's a failsafe," she screamed over the otherworldly cacophony. "A quantum resonance disruptor that could sever the connection between dimensions. But it requires a conscious sacrifice. Someone has to stay behind and manually activate it." The phantom gorilla's attention snapped to her with predatory focus, its burning eyes boring into her soul. It understood human language, understood the threat she represented, and its rage intensified to levels that made the air itself catch fire. The creature's massive form began to split again, creating dozens of manifestations that surrounded the team from every angle. But as the phantom animals closed in for the final assault, something unexpected happened. The unconscious team member, the one who had been possessed, suddenly broke free from the supernatural influence. His human consciousness reasserted itself, and with it came a terrible understanding of what needed to be done. "I can feel them all," he whispered, his voice hoarse but his own again. "Every animal that ever suffered, every creature that died in pain. They don't want revenge, they want peace. The rage is just what's keeping them trapped here." He staggered toward the quantum resonance disruptor, a device hidden beneath the facility's main laboratory. The phantom gorilla's manifestations converged on him, but something had changed. The creature's attacks passed through him harmlessly, as if his brief possession had created a temporary immunity to its supernatural power. "They're not evil," he continued, his hands working frantically at the device's controls. "They're just lost, trapped between worlds by their own pain. The gorilla, it's trying to help them find their way home, but it doesn't know how. It only knows rage because that's all it was taught." The phantom gorilla's primary manifestation stopped its advance, its burning eyes flickering with something that might have been recognition. For a moment, the creature's rage subsided, replaced by a profound sadness that seemed to encompass the suffering of every animal that had ever lived and died in captivity. The team member's fingers found the activation switch, but he hesitated. "If I do this, it will sever all connections between our world and theirs. The phantom animals will find peace, but the knowledge we could have gained from studying them will be lost forever." "Do it," urged the photographer, his camera finally falling silent. "Some knowledge isn't worth the price we've paid for it." As the quantum resonance disruptor powered up, the phantom gorilla approached the team member one final time. But instead of attacking, the massive creature reached out with surprising gentleness and placed one spectral hand on the man's shoulder. In that touch, he felt the weight of every animal's suffering, but also their forgiveness. The device activated with a sound like reality tearing apart. The dimensional barriers snapped back into place with violent force, severing the connections that had allowed the phantom animals to manifest in the physical world. One by one, the spectral creatures began to fade, their forms dissolving into points of light that drifted upward like stars returning to the sky. The phantom gorilla was the last to go, its massive form becoming translucent as the supernatural energy that sustained it was drawn back across the dimensional divide. But before it vanished completely, the creature's eyes met those of the surviving team members, and in that gaze was not rage but gratitude, the peace of a tortured soul finally finding rest. The facility collapsed in on itself as the supernatural forces that had transformed it were withdrawn, but the team escaped into the jungle, forever changed by what they had witnessed. Behind them, where Laboratory 7 had stood, only a crater remained, a scar on the earth that would serve as a reminder of the price of unchecked scientific ambition. In the years that followed, similar facilities around the world would be quietly shut down, their research abandoned as humanity slowly learned that some boundaries should never be crossed. The phantom gorilla's rage had ended, but its message lived on. Consciousness, once awakened, could never truly be destroyed, only transformed, and sometimes that transformation came with a terrible cost.